The Long Ride Home, pages 8 to 12, Rowan and Betsy. Every day, Rowan wanted to go back to Betsy. Once next to her, he would raise his arms and jump up and down. So I began lifting him up onto her, keeping one hand on him for safety, while Betsy grazed, calm and contented, as stable as a big old couch. Laid on his tummy, along the length of her brown back, his legs stretched out behind him, Rowan would explore the smooth softness of her coat with his fingers. When he lay on her like this, there were no tantrums, only stillness. A stillness, a pleasure I had not seen in him before. All his self-stimulatory behaviour, or stimming, the flapping, rocking, chanting, and other repetitive noises and movements that accompany autism and are usually a reaction to the neurological stresses of living in the human world of man-made stimuli, all of this would fall away. He was a different kid, and I was back with horses, with a horse anyway, even if I wasn't riding. Suddenly, life was a whole lot better than it had been. And then the penny dropped. Betsy was a quiet riding horse, quiet with people, if rude and domineering towards her fellow equines. Not the kind of hot-tempered sport variety of horse that I was used to. What if I got up there with him and rode her, like the cowboys on their local ranches did with their kids? She'd be perfect for this. The large western saddles they used in Texas would be perfect for the job too. Plenty of room for parent and child riding together. Rowan was clearly getting a lot out of just being with Betsy. Might actually riding her maximise the effect? Surely it would be worth trying. Besides, it would be an adventure that Rowan and I could share, father and son together. So I went to talk to Stafford, Betsy's owner, about it. He already knew of the good effects that Betsy was having on my son, and he knew something of the stresses we were under as a family. When I told him what I wanted to do, Stafford handed me the key to his saddle room. "Have at it," he said. "I hope the old girl works out for you." Stafford was taking an enormous risk. In today's litigious society, in the US at least, many people would have considered the situation and thought, autistic kid, my horse, potential accident, get sued, sorry but no way. And just as our neighbour on the other side had done, actually you can see right behind, that's where he lived, he had recently built a swimming pool right up against our boundary fence. Worried that my uncannily agile son might climb the fence and fall into the pond, I'd approached this neighbour with the suggestion that I teach Rowan to swim in that pool, so that should he climb over one day without my knowledge, he would at least be able to swim his way out of trouble. "Nope," the neighbour had replied, "I can't risk the liability." Instead, he posted a big no trespassing sign on the fence. So for Stafford to just hand me the saddle room key like that and say, "Have at it," was a gesture of unusual selflessness, of faith. So I found myself one humid afternoon alone in Stafford's saddle room, looking at the biggest western saddle I'd ever seen. Hefting the thing off its rack, I puffed and panted it over to Betsy, swung it up onto her back, almost displacing a disc in the process. Clearly I would have to get fitter. I mounted, and no sooner had I put my heels to her sides than she shot forward, yanking the reins from my hand and then spinning with a vicious twist designed to unseat the rider, which it didn't. She headed firmly for the barn. I hadn't encountered a horse quite this rude in a long, long while. Clearly no one had ridden her recently, and she wasn't of a mind to suffer fools, or perhaps anyone at all. Was this really such a good idea? But I'd learned to train horses, and more difficult horses than this. Retired racehorses that had to be retrained for eventing or for hunting. The old Leicestershire farmers in England who taught me the trade had taught me well. Within a few minutes I had Betsy in hand, but I could tell from riding her that she'd never had any real training. She was unbalanced, her gait unrhythmic, her mouth heavy on the bit, and her centre of gravity so far forward that stopping and turning were a problem. Before riding her with Rowan, I would have to work with her to ensure a safer, more balanced ride. So over the next few weeks, when Kristen was watching Rowan, I began to show the ornery old mare how to cooperate better with her rider. And soon she began to enjoy the attention and to accept a softer way of going, easier on both horse and rider. She also got fitter, more supple. As hot June turned to roasting July, I felt ready to attempt the first ride with my son. And so the day came. Rowan was delighted to be swung up into the vast bathtub of a saddle, and I climbed up behind him, nervous as to how this would go. As I slotted myself in neatly behind Rowan, I could at once feel how he and I made one body together. More striking was that his almost incessant fidgeting ceased immediately. Now that he sat in front of me, he had a physical stillness that I'd never felt before. I nudged Betsy forward into a walk and stared around, looking for inspiration. Now, although Rowan had no expressive language, I had always talked to him as if he had. As we walked the trails together, I had talked about everything around us, the trees, the birds, the sky, the atmosphere, oxygen, the pulmonary system, the fact that the sky was blue, and what was blue in any case, what were the colours on the spectrum. One-sided monologues, maybe, but ones that I hoped were seeping into his consciousness and might someday come cascading out of him in words. I'm an optimist, as you'll no doubt have gathered. But Rowan did have a language of his own, what in autism jargon we call echolalia, in which a child tends to echo or repeat, often obsessively, things that he or she has heard, an advertising jingle, a snippet from a Thomas the Tank Engine video, a snatch of song from The Lion King, but they can't say, "Mummy, I'm hungry," "Mummy, I'm thirsty," "Mummy, I need the toilet," "Mummy, I love you." So there I was, up there with my son, wondering where to go next. My eye fell on the wooded creek at the lower end of the pasture and the pond right in front of us. "Do you want to go to the woods or the pond?" I asked, almost rhetorically, more voicing my own thoughts than expecting an answer. "To the pond," Rowan chanted back at me in a sing-song voice. Classic echolalia, repeating back the last 3 words you've said, not real speech. Still, better than a kick in the face, I thought, and down to the pond we went. As we approached, a great blue heron lifted from the water and flapped away towards the west. "Heron," said Rowan. I didn't know he knew the word. Oh my God, he was talking.